Little Red Riding Hood. We all know the story. Well, in this case, not exactly. Considered an oddball in an already odd class of animated movies released in 2005, Hoodwinked has shared a complicated relationship among animation buffs. But similar to what Flippers himself said, sometimes all you need to do is take a closer look and you'll find some rather unexpected things. And that's exactly what I'm going to do today. Take a closer look at this movie and explore whether or not it has the reputation it deserves. Now, obviously, there will be spoilers for this movie ahead, so if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want anything ruined, and trust me, you don't, then you should probably click off the video now. This will be your only spoiler warning. Now, when it comes to this movie, there's always one question nobody can get around trying to answer. Does the animation style ruin what is otherwise a rather solid story? Now, I can only speak for myself when answering this, but personally, I'd say the answer is no. And I know I've made it no secret that I place the story above all else in terms of importance when it comes to movies, and if you ask me, Hoodwinked actually has a great one. No matter how many times I watch it, I'm always impressed by all the clever plot twists in what's presented as a rather straightforward story, such as the wolf turning out to be a reporter who wants to find the bandit as much as anybody else, or the woodsman turning out to be an actor with a few screws loose who actually came to Red's rescue by accident. Even Red, instead of being an innocent little girl, is very deadpan and doesn't take nonsense from anybody, and she's all the funnier for it. And though I do find the granny who's secretly into extreme sports to be a little over the top, it's still appropriate for a movie like this and an interesting twist on the loving old grandma approach. And finally, even though it's not the most well hidden plot twist ever, Boyango turning out to be behind everything and seeing him go from a cute little bunny to a psychotic maniac who will murder if that's what it takes to achieve his goals is also really well done. If you ask me, even the whole setup works really well by depicting the aftermath of the Little Red Riding Hood attack as an intense police investigation where everybody is a suspect. And then in comes Flippers. Seriously, he's the perfect archetypal detective that would make the likes of Sherlock Holmes very proud. Right from the start, you can tell he's got everything figured out. And I always love his line, pieces of a puzzle make funny shapes, but they still fit together in the end. Because it shows that no matter what he's presented with, he will come to the logical conclusion. In contrast to the amusing police, who are extremely impulsive and prone to assuming the worst in everyone. And the flashbacks are also great, with everything tying in together perfectly while also providing a completely different context to what was presented before, especially in the Red and Wolf flashbacks. Really, I just find it brilliant how he goes from looking like an obviously guilty creep in her flashbacks to finding out that it all boils down to misunderstandings and his belief that Red's the bandit. Really, for what this movie set out to do, it does it perfectly. Even characters that should be annoying are actually very funny, from the hyperactive Twitchy, who I personally can't get enough of, to the goat who may or may not be lying about having been cursed to sing everything he says, and even the woodsman himself. It's like he's so dumb, but he's such an innocent guy you can't help but like him. And like I said, another thing this movie nails is the humor. This is one parody that actually has the laughs to back up its jokes. But it's also able to tell a story about people being put out of business by a recipe bandit and a girl who longs for adventure. And I'm not gonna lie, both of those things make the perfect setup to a great story that maybe doesn't take itself totally seriously. But even with that in mind, the genuine emotional parts still land, especially when Red hits rock bottom after finding out the truth about her grandmother. And keeping in mind that actual heart can be hard to pull off in such a blatant comedy, this one manages to do it, and I'm gonna give it proper credit for that. Okay, so to sum up, Hoodwinked has a great story, a wide array of good and funny characters, great humor, and even manages to sell an emotional moment or two. But with all of that, there's still one thing that must be addressed: the animation. Now, as I've already said, I personally think that Hoodwinked has enough going for it that the animation not being exactly up to Pixar standards shouldn't get in the way of that, but for many, it has. And I guess I can see how somebody who can't look past its rather simplistic and maybe even ugly designs might not be able to really enjoy it as a result. But like I said, I firmly believe that this movie is very well written, to the point that had it had better animation, it might have just gotten an Academy Award nomination for Best Animated Feature. And I guess that can open up a whole other conversation about how much animation quality really matters when it comes to these kind of movies. Because if you notice, Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, and all the other big animation studios will always get heaps of praise dumped on them for their great animation, even if the movies themselves are outright terrible. And yet, when it's the other way around, when it's got a great story, but the animation isn't quite up to snuff, it becomes quite controversial, with many even saying it's a bad movie based on that aspect alone. And that is their prerogative to do so. You can watch any movie by any standards you want to. But I just don't know if it's fair for a movie to be judged more on its visuals than its story. Because I firmly believe that if you don't have a good story, then the visuals don't matter. Hence my feelings on Hoodwinked. But it seems that even mainstream critics seem to have a rather different opinion on the subject. And listen, as I've said in a previous video, I get it. Good CGI is very hard to achieve, and the animators should get proper credit when they do it. But at the same time, I don't think visuals, even in animated movies, should be enough to make or break movies like this. Because the visuals are only one part of the process. And if you ask me, not one any movie can get by on alone. Because I've seen plenty of movies that didn't have the best animation, or editing, or even overall quality. And yet, I went back and watched them again because I thought the story was that good. And at the same time, I've also seen movies that were great in all those same departments, but didn't have a good story, and I never had any desire to go back and rewatch them. Now, I know there are people out there who have the exact opposite opinion as me, and that's perfectly fine if they do. But personally, I think that sometimes special effects just get a little too much credit, and that can result in otherwise good movies being pulled down lower than they should, just because they didn't have the budget to make their story visually appealing. Okay, I know I got a little off topic there, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that Hoodwinked could easily open up a whole new window of discussions on the film and animation industries and how much visual effects are valued versus how good the story is, and how much each one deserves in terms of judging the overall quality of them. But to get away from all of that, personally, I believe Hoodwinked is a very good piece of children's entertainment, and if more people were willing to look past its animation and give it a chance, they might just find that Flippers was right about sometimes having to take a closer look at things. Okay, that pretty much wraps this all up. And sorry if this video was a little all over the place, but I'd still say that Hoodwink's reception and legacy exposes a larger discussion to be had about the animation industry. But setting that aside, what do you think? Do you think Hoodwinked is a good movie despite its clunky animation? or do you believe the animation keeps it from being enjoyable to watch? Please feel free to talk about it or anything else brought up here in the comments. And as I've already said, if you disagree with me, that's fine. We're all going to have our opinions on the subject, and you are just as entitled to yours as anybody else is. Thank you all for watching. It is all very much appreciated, and I hope to see you all next time.